Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of the Roaring Agents podcast. My name is Mike Roig. I am here with Brian Boero from 1000 Watt. They do strategy and creative building for real estate companies and similar properties, right?
Yeah. Mike, thanks for having me on. Yeah, we're a strategy and creative agency, and we are focused 100% on residential real estate. We work with brokers, mortgage companies, international real estate brands, prop tech companies, teams, but real estate is what we know and love. We've been doing it for 15 years.
So you have one of the only newsletters that anytime I see it in my inbox, I read it. Now, I don't read every email that I get, but when I see it, I don't skip yours. You guys have a fantastic industry insight. You give insight and you're still giving marketing and positioning. How do you keep up on all this so deeply and know it so well?
Well, thank you. That's a compliment. To stop and read something, I'm always grateful for that. But yeah, we have a Monday morning newsletter we send out called the Dose, and occasionally we send out sort of posts via email during the week, and it's all industry analysis mixed with a little bit of creative inspiration. So I'm glad you enjoy it. But one of the great things about that, and I think this is instructive for your audience, is we have written almost 1,300 blog posts slash email newsletters
Wow.
since 2007. And it has never gotten easier. It has always been hard. And that's okay, because what that investment has done is, in the early days of 1000 Watt, we were started in 2007, it really built our brand more than anything else. And then over time, our work sort of became the brand. But when you hear terms like content marketing, that gets thrown around a lot, or blogging, or setting up a Substack to do email newsletters. Like, that's what that is. It is sharing a point of view that you have with an audience. And if that point of view is unique enough or articulated strongly enough, then you're going to attract a tribe of people that for whom that message and point of view resonates. So it's super hard, but it is so important for any brand to A, have a point of view in the first place, but B, find out the ways that are best to share it. The only reason why I'm talking to you right now is because, as you said, you read the emails that we send out, right? So it's how we built our business, and it has not gotten easier. It's hard to write. It's hard to keep tabs on everything, but it's absolutely worth it.
And your emails are pretty in depth, and they're not necessarily long, but the points that you get across are very concise, and there's a lot of great insight to those. They're not fluff, and that's what I really like about it.
Yeah, no, it takes a lot of time to do that. So, you
Yes.
think, well, I'm an agent, and what do I do? And, I mean, look, nothing to this day beats a great email, right? Particularly right now. The market's decelerating, declining, shifting, whatever you want to call it. And we're in this state of sort of weightlessness where nobody really knows what's going on, whether you're a buyer, seller, and an owner. And what a marvelous opportunity, if you really know the market cold and have a point of view on it, to share that with people who are craving that information.
Yeah.
So if you have to spend 3 hours after dinner writing a market analysis, whether you share it on Instagram or TikTok or via email, it's worth it over the long haul.
How do you decide, with all the things that you have, the knowledge, how do you decide what goes into each one? How do you, the reason I bring this up is a lot of people get stuck. Like agents, I was just talking to someone this morning, they have trouble getting started. They have all this knowledge and like, well, what if this isn't good enough? What if that's not good enough? How do you decide what's worth putting in, and how much do you worry about if everyone's going to like it? Because you do have opinions.
I have a couple of answers to that question. And one thing that I have always believed is that oftentimes the essence of marketing is simply saying or doing what your competitors are unwilling to say or unable to do. So, a lot of what we did early on and still today is find the thing that nobody else will say and say it. And when you start to think that way, you cultivate your own voice and your point of view, and you establish difference. Now, we don't write things to be gratuitously provocative or to pick fights for no reason, but we always look for the thing that we can uniquely contribute that maybe nobody else is saying. So, this is especially easy in the real estate agent world. Okay. Well, there's sort of the conventional narrative that everybody sort of touts, and it's very easy to break away from it. Like, I'll give you an extreme example. Well, that I'm not suggesting anyone do specifically, but just to make it really clear. Well, maybe the right message for you right now is, buyers, it's a terrible time to buy. Right now, it's a terrible time to buy. Prices are still high. Mortgage rates have risen about 40% in the last several months. Cool your jets. Right? Nobody's saying that publicly. And I'm not saying that's the right answer or it's the right answer for you, but when everybody's saying one thing, find the thing that you have to contribute that stands way outside of that.
I just had a flashback. I think it was like 2009. And I tweeted something about like I'd been up all night thinking about this idea, but I wasn't sure I wanted to write it. And I don't know if it was you or Mark, but it was one of you two that replied and said, "Do it."
Yeah.
Which exactly plays into exactly what you were just saying.
Yeah.
I just had that flashback.
I have always thought that you should feel a little bit nervous before you post or write anything, whether you're doing an Instagram reel or writing an email newsletter, honestly. And again, that's not a suggestion to be stupid or pick fights, but you ought to feel a little bit on edge about sharing your point of view. Because if you're not, you're probably just saying the same thing everybody else is saying. And who wants that?
I ended up putting up a blog post that was along the same lines and I was really nervous about putting it up, and I put it up, and then something happened and I changed brokerages. Yeah. And I met with the broker owner, and he's talked to me. He goes, yeah, I'd like you to come to the company. He's one of the few people who actually had a litmus test to have anyone join. Like, most people just take anyone, but he actually wanted to know. He's like, I just need you to take down that post. Which conferred all the whole thing is like, oh man, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do and blah, blah, blah. But that was.
Did you do it?
Yeah. And I took it down. I was like, okay, maybe he's right.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have, but I did.
Hey.
Because I wasn't sure, because I was unsure about the post and all that and whatever. But
it's a unique point of view. I mean, look, think about the brands that we are most drawn to. They have a point of view. Okay. Does Patagonia have a point of view? Certainly. Does Apple have a point of view? Of course, right? It's really a foundational matter in terms of building your brand. What do you believe? How do you see the world? How do you make it better?
Do agents need to worry about their own personal logo, or is their video content their brand?
Well, there are many definitions of brand, of what a brand is, what people say about you when you're not in the room, all of that type of stuff. And look, I think for a lot of years, and I think we're just sort of recovering from this, for agents in particular, they were sort of fed a line about building your personal brand in the most thin and cartoonish way possible. And I think that we are beginning to emerge from that sort of formative way of thinking about a brand. But at the end of the day, your brand is, I think for an agent, um, what you do, how you do it in ways that are different or better than everybody else in the marketplace. And your logo necessarily isn't your brand in and of itself. Your logo, or what we would call a visual identity, should reinforce and support those underlying truths of your brand. So changing your logo is not going to change your brand. Um, but it's like clothing. Okay, let's just use an analogy. Oftentimes, it's easier to understand these things when you take them out of this sort of nebulous branding world. So when an agent goes into a listing presentation, um, that is a very important point of interaction with a client. And an agent will dress a certain way and take great care in dressing a certain way, in a way that is professional, but also reflects who they are beneath the clothing, right? It has to be true to their brand, whether that's a suit or whether it's a pair of expensive denim jeans, whatever that is, it's the wrapper. And if the agent does that right, that reinforcement of the brand they're projecting is what a visual identity can do, and where things like your logo and your color palette and typography come into play and make a difference. They're not the lead element, they're the supporting element. And it's funny. I've always thought, agents are so good at thinking about image in terms of their dress, oftentimes the car they drive. Agents, have always been trained on scripts and look for the kind of coaching and training that you provide. But when it comes to sort of articulating their brand in the world or representing it outwardly, whether that's through words or design, that level of care isn't as evident. And that's really a missed opportunity.
Where do they start with that thought process to figure that out?
Well, I think it really lies, first of all, in doing thoughtful positioning. So positioning is that's something that we do every day at 1,000 Watt, whether it's for a large company or a small company, and that is figuring out first where in the marketplace you sit. What is the territory in your particular town or neighborhood or market segment that you can own? This is the territory I own, and I can defend and I can claim credibly. In other words, I can articulate to you the reasons why you should believe that I own this territory. Okay. Secondly, positioning also then vis-a-vis your target customer. And this is where we get into things like personas and really zoning in on who our target customers are. What is the territory that we want to own in their mind? Okay. So that is the exercise of positioning. And there are lots of different ways to get at it. I'll give you one simple exercise that your listeners can, do at home. And it sounds really simple, but when you sit down and you try to do this, it provokes challenging conversation. So we call this exercise first, best, only.
What is it?
First, best, only. Okay. So let's say you're a team that is working community X. Okay. So write down what were the things that you did first, right? Whether you've been in business for a year or 25 years, what are the things where you said, and these don't have to be big things, they can be little things. What did we start doing that nobody else here does? Okay. Best. What are the things that you are demonstrably the best at? Not, we have integrity. We're the best at being honest. Like, those are table stakes. Okay. Don't do that. What are you the best at? Well, we're the best at getting first-time home buyers into homes. And here are the specific reasons why we're the best. Okay. Write it out and get really specific. Again, the things don't need to be huge, but what they need to be is demonstrably true. So first, best, and then only. What are the things that only you, as a solo practitioner, or your team, if you're a team, what are the things that only you do? Okay, well, we're the only team that does a pre-inspection for our listings, whatever, right? We're the only team that not only does staging, but has a feng shui consultant come in to all of our listings, whatever it is, right? What are the things that only you do? And list those out. Again, they don't need to be big. And then take all the things that you have identified as being your first, best, and only, and pull out the ones you think are the strongest. And then those are the things around which you sort of establish your territory, right? And demonstrate your difference. And that's really the first step in this process. And then once you do that, then you have to go into messaging. What's your story? How do you articulate that? How do you weave that into a narrative that connects with people rationally and emotionally? It always baffles me to look at most agents' websites or most teams' websites, and if you kind of squint, they all look the same. They're home search utilities. They have IDX. They have our current listings. They have an about us. Maybe they got a few testimonials, but they're all cookie cutter. So the opportunity, a website really, in most cases, particularly your homepage, is an argument about why somebody should hire you. That's what your homepage should be. I'm not saying you shouldn't have home search, but that shouldn't be the center of attention, because there are a gazillion places online to search for homes. And believe me, your prospects and clients are not turning to your website first for that utility. They're just not. So just always look for opportunities for difference. And the path towards that is thinking really hard about positioning.
So I get a lot of new agents who are listening to this podcast. They're like, I'm in an office, for those that still have offices, but office of, 200 agents. And I'm the new person in a big, Portland is a big area.
Yeah.
And I just got my license 6 months ago. I'm looking at this list going, I'm not the first at this. I'm not the best at that. I'm not where do they kind of break that down as far as like being the best or the only when they're feeling like they're one of a gazillion?
Well, okay. Therein lies the challenge. If you're a brand new agent, you need to figure out what things you're going to be the first to do. And they don't have to be big things. You need to find out what you can be the best at. Well, maybe if you come from another career, maybe you're really great at working a spreadsheet and you can dig into the MLS and figure out insights that most agents are not really sharing. Whatever it is, right? Figure out what you're going to be the first to do, what your ambition is to be the best at, and what are the things that you're going to do that you don't see any other agents in your office or your community doing.
I love that.
And again, they don't have to be big things. The problem is, as you know, there are almost 1.6 realtors in the United States of America right now. That's twice as many as existed 20 years ago. We're going to sell 1 million fewer homes this year than we did last year, at least. And we're entering a period where scarcity is going to be kind of a thing. Okay. So any opportunity you can find to differentiate yourself is worth pursuing. The funny thing, Mike, is even agents' reputations have been commoditized. So if I go on Zillow and look up agent reviews, or I go on Yelp, and I do this a lot where I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, you're going to see hundreds of agents, all with 4 and 5 star reviews. So they're all 5-star agents, and they all have the same kind of reviews where a selection of people say they're awesome. So even agents' reputations have been undifferentiated, and they all sort of blend together. So the trick is to break out of that.
Hmm. I like that. You guys started in 2007. What got you started with 1000 watt back in 2007, right before everything changed?
Yeah, right before everything changed. Well, I've been around real estate. I've never sold a home in my life. I've never been a real estate broker. Um, so, you know, detract that from my credibility as you may. But I have been around this industry since 1997. I started by working for Brad Inman. Um, I ended up running Inman for 8 years. Then I went into technology at a startup that was doing digital signatures for tablet PCs, if any of you are old enough to remember that. And then the market turned and we're like, nobody wants to buy a $3,000 computer anymore. So we got out of that. And my co founder, and Mark and myself said, okay, let's do some consulting for a while till we figure out what's next. And it's been 15 years. And now we're a team of 15 people, and we have
Wow.
clients all over the country, and we have fun doing it.
Has branding changed within real estate in that time with what people will do or the styles? Is any notable difference?
Well, yes, and I think there has been a greater awareness cultivated about the value in cultivating a brand long term. And again, a brand is not logo. So yeah, I think it's changed over the years. I mentioned earlier, sort of when we first started in this business, I call it sort of proto branding. It's like prehistoric branding. And, there was a big marketing company that did a lot of branding for agents across the country. And they were very, very big. And their thing was like, okay, Mike, you're selling real estate in Portland, Oregon, and you like to play tennis. So you're Mike, the tennis agent, and we're going to do, a big brochure with you with a tennis racket. And okay, well, what does that do? It means, okay, you could say it at a certain level that's creating the sort of difference that I'm talking about. You're the agent with the tennis racket, and somebody else is the hat lady, that type of thing. And you're like, okay, that's sort of a really basic way to create difference. The problem with that is nobody gives a shit. Excuse me.
You're fine.
You play tennis, okay? Nobody cares. Um, so it created difference without meaning, and I feel like generally as an industry, we've sort of moved beyond that, which is a good thing.
That's powerful. Difference without a meaning. And which really plays into that first best only. These are differences, but these have meaning.
Yeah.
This is because, what it was in the 90s and early 2000s was the person leaning on their car,
Yeah.
having their dogs, whatever, the
Yeah.
glamour shots. Those are all gone, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Well, we got Instagram with guys leaning on cars that they
Yeah,
don't own.
totally. We have other ways of doing silly stuff. Yeah.
Justin Tucker was talking to our group a while back ago, and he mentioned the archetypes.
Yeah.
And he said he got that from you. And I was really impressed with that whole idea of the archetypes. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you use it sometimes?
Yeah. Well, it certainly shouldn't originate with us. Archetyping is something that is done a lot when you do brand strategy. And it's actually derived from social psychology. In fact, it was the social psychologist Carl Jung that sort of first sort of built out this idea of certain baseline human types. Okay. And that sort of explain most people. And the same goes for brands. So we use archetyping to help brands sort of figure out who they are and to establish personality, voice, tone, um, positioning, even. And so you can think about this, and if you Google Google brand archetypes, you'll see what I mean. It's frequently represented on a wheel, and you have sort of the sage brand, the magician brand, the rebel brand, the hero brand, and it goes all the way around. The caretaker brand, the citizen brand, the sovereign brand. And if you think about this, like to use really obvious examples, right? So Disney would be considered a magician brand. Okay. So IKEA is like, the everyman brand. These things just help us root ourselves as we think about, where to place a brand. And there are all kinds of sub archetypes, right? There's like 8 different kinds of hero archetypes. We were working with a client recently where we're like, okay, well, you're the hero brand, but underneath that you have, different sort of facets to that, and you're really the liberator. And so kind of really homing in on that, and then sort of using that as a point of departure for a lot of the tone and the messaging was helpful. I realize this all sounds like voodoo, but it can be
Not to
very
me.
helpful. It can be very helpful.
Well, what I liked about it was that a lot of people like, what do I post and how do I act and whatever, is that if you look at this archetype, kind of what you're talking about is how do you want to be positioned? How do you want the people to see you?
Yeah.
Do you want to be seen as the Joker? Do you want to be seen as the magician who makes miracles happen, or the rebel or whatever? And, that rebel plays in with, do you want to say things that no one else is saying? That's what the rebel would do.
That's what the rebel would do. But you don't have to be a rebel to employ that, I would say. But, I mean, it does also provide guardrails
Right.
around, say, your marketing. So, for example, again, a really obvious one, Virgin, the brand. It's a lover brand. Okay. Virgin does lots of cheeky, sexy stuff that, for example, United Airlines couldn't get away with.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so establishing and getting clear on an archetype also kind of channels and puts some guardrails on your marketing so you don't end up doing stuff that's like, okay, why is he or she doing that? That's just embarrassing.
Yeah. And that's what I really like about it. Is it like, oh, does this fit the archetype that you're trying to put out there? Because it is about the positioning. Do you want
Yeah.
to see yourself? And you
Yeah.
can't all of a sudden be the Joker when you're trying to be the sage or whatever. That those
Totally. Yeah,
So that's why I like that a lot.
absolutely. These things are all guides. They provide clarity. All of these constructs, right? This whole the whole practice of sort of branding is really about just trying to get clear on things. And these are just ways of gaining that clarity.
So we mentioned. So I was actually looking through your Twitter feed right before we started, and I saw you tweeted about rooflines and logos, and I was like, well, I was going to ask about that anyway.
Yeah.
I just cannot stand them. I just don't see any that are any good. That's where everyone wants to go because it makes sense. Gosh, so I'm doing something with homes. What's your take on those logos now?
Well, I mean, look, yes, I made sort of a joke about that, but look, it's what we were just talking about earlier. Okay, there's a gazillion real estate agents in the world right now. If you look at a high level, they all kind of clump together in this undifferentiated mass, which is really a bummer for the practitioners who are really great at what they do. And this is another instance where people sort of all glom onto the same things. They do marketing the same, they do branding the same, it's all the same. So the roofline logo is but one example of that. I think, and this paradoxically works because I think, or is the case because, as you know, sometimes being a real estate agent can be a very lonely profession and isolating. And so the tendency is when you're trying to figure out what to do, look around and see what everybody else is doing and then do that, when really the more effective way is just sort of look inward, not look around. So no, don't do a roofline logo. We have enough roofline logos in the world in real estate. Do something different. And people will get it that you're in real estate. Okay. You don't need the roofline logo because you're doing real estate. You're writing about it. You're in context. Tax accountants don't host open houses. People are going to figure out you're in the business of real estate. You don't need a roof line to signify that.
And with social media now, it's even more obvious what we do because it's out there. Back in the 90s, it was harder. It's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
So that actually makes that all make more sense to me now.
Yeah. No, it's, yeah. Sorry, you got me started on roofline logos.
So speaking of logos, it's a small part. I know there's so much more that goes into it, but you end up coming down to a final thing that this is the identity of the brand.
Yeah.
How hard is that? You've got probably tons of concepts that you're filtering through, ideas, brainstorming. How do you decide on that final one?
Well, the truth is, it's not that hard
Hmm.
if you think about it this way, which we do at 1000 Watt. The logo is simply the capstone on a larger structure,
Okay.
right? So the structure's foundation starts down here, where you look at brand archetype and positioning, and then you build things like brand voice and tone and a messaging platform on top of that. And ideally, all of that work comes before we ever do visuals. And so the visuals need to be a natural extension of the stuff that comes before it. So the logo is not that this isn't hard work, it's a lot of hard work, but the visuals need to extend upward to that point, that capstone from the stuff that comes below. So when that's the case and you approach it that way, it's not quite as random or vexing as just trying to like figure something out from nothing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. So you're not going in with a rough idea of a logo. You're doing all that other stuff first and kind of letting that go.
Yeah.
Where I think most people do it the other way. I've got this great idea. Here's my initials. I want these to be this. Now let's figure out the story behind it.
Yeah. Right. And not to say that if you have a really crappy roofline logo and you do something slightly better, that's a good thing, right? But like it's kind of you're really thinking about building a brand identity and creating difference. That foundational to capstone approach is the best way to do it, right? Sure, you can put a veneer of something nicer on top of everything, and that may help you, but really all of it needs to be of the same structure.
And this is where just going to get a logo from 99 Designs or a graphic designer without doing that work behind it ends up with something like I'm with EXP. Our logo a few years ago, I absolutely hated that. That was a weird, jumbled mess, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What I like now is nice and sleek, but that logo was like this weird pin, emblem, something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, see, this is interesting. So EXP did they refreshed the logo about a year or so ago,
Yeah.
and they cleaned it up and modernized it, and it's cleaner, right?
Right.
It's improvement. But that's not the EXP brand.
Right.
You know what the EXP brand is. The EXP brand stands for a certain amount of, well, you could probably tell me better than I could tell you, obviously. So I'm not going to, I have a perception of the EXP brand that has nothing to do with that logo. The other thing is with the EXP brand, and you know this too, the point of that is for it to get out of the way.
Yes.
Right. And let the agent or team's brand take center stage.
Yep.
So their strategy for a brand identity visually is really minimalist because of what really is their brand, which is to put the agent out here front and center and to have the EXP brand back here.
That I never thought of it from that sense, but you're actually right. There, it's actually got a bit of a transparency to it in some places that you have it. It
Yeah.
is it's there for legal reasons for the most part, because every state says you have to put your brokerage.
Yeah.
EXP doesn't really care about their brokerage. They care about the agent doing their thing and getting out there. That is because I was thinking as soon as I brought EXP, I was like, yeah, what is the reasoning why they have it like that? There's no story, but that is the stories. We're out of the way.
Yeah. That's the brand.
I never thought of it like that. where the other one was ugly and in the way. Literally, when someone mentioned EXP to me a long time ago, I was like, I saw a logo, it's terrible. And I judged the company. I knew nothing about the company at that point, but I completely judged them off that logo.
Yeah. No, the EXP logo update was great, but the point is that it is inoffensive.
Right. Yeah.
It's okay. It's fine. It looks clean. It looks, sharp now, but like it's okay, right? But that's the point.
And that original logo was a 99 Designs logo where they just give a 300 character brief or whatever, and then they let 100
Yeah,
people.
they did as I've heard the story, I think Glenn, way back when he started EXP, basically just did a little contest, right?
Yep.
And, it didn't cost much. And that became the EXP logo for a lot of years.
Oh, I found it. I found where you could vote on it and you could see some of the other iterations and stuff, but it didn't have the story behind it. So I'm
Yeah.
hammering this home for any agent who's thinking about trying to create their own brand or whatever, is that what you've said makes complete sense. You've got to figure out the story behind it and why this matters and
Yeah.
why you're doing this instead of just coming up with something pretty. Because I think what we do is we try to make it pretty and then reverse engineer of why it makes sense.
Well, because that's easy. That's the easy thing to do.
Yeah.
It's easy. It's easy to pay a freelance designer in your city or town $2,500 to create a pretty decent logo than it is to not only go through sort of the more basic exercises that I'm talking about, but then to build upward from that. So, I mean, we all gravitate to the things that are easier.
Yeah.
I try to resist that myself, but I'm human. So yes, here's $2,500. Oh, that logo looks better. I'm going to put it on my website, my business card, and my postcards, and wherever else, and we're done. But you're not really done.
No, which is making me rethink all my logos I've played with. I love logos. I love looking at logos. I like the prettiness, and I'm missing the story in a lot of those.
Yeah. 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 I'm not saying that a good logo is not important. I think you get the point.
When you see all of these, especially larger brands who have money, and you see that they just have terrible brands, does it hurt you? Like it hurts me to see these roofline logos and see agents doing bad stuff. It's like, what are you thinking?
Well, I think we've gotten better at that. I mean, if you think about, for example, Century 21, they went through a rebrand 5 or 6 years ago. Cold Banker just went through a rebrand. I think we're getting better, but again, that's visual identity. So let's not talk about this in terms of branding. Let's talk about visual identity. So the Century 21 brand is still the Century 21 brand, right? It's a very well-known sort of mid-market brand that evokes sort of good feelings of house and home in a number of markets, right? It's a well-known brand. That is real, whether they did the visual identity update or not. So visual identity, I think, has taken a great leap forward in the last decade or so. So you see fewer instances of large brands that just look awful. That's becoming increasingly uncommon. Frequently what we do, the way we think about visual identity is we gravitate towards really good companies that are not looking or sounding as good in the world as they actually are. Right? So if you're a great agent or a great team, is the way you present visually in the world and the way you articulate your value in the world, is that as good as you actually are? Chances are it's not. So you're putting something out into the world that is causing friction or a drag and probably hurting you around the edges, when what you should be doing is to have something in the world that is as good as you and reflects accurately the qualities you bring to the table. So a lot of our work is simply aligning that. the goodness or truth within a company that is not being reflected out here, and we close that gap.
Hmm. Wow, I'm gonna be listening to this several times to get all the nuggets out of it. I've I've always had a question about color, and if color
Yeah.
has as much meaning as the gurus say. If Zillow was purple, would it hurt Zillow? I mean, Keller Williams is red, EXP's blue, and everyone else is blue, it seems like.
Uh-huh.
Would purple, changing Zillow to purple, would it destroy them? Or if they'd started purple, would they have not succeeded?
Well, I'll just leave it at this. Color is important. I'm not a designer.
Right.
1,000 Watt employs designers, very talented people who could talk knowledgeably at length about color theory. Um, I don't have that particular expertise. Some of my colleagues do, so I'll leave it at that. But yes, color matters.
Okay. We're almost out of time. Pictures on real estate signs.
Yeah,
Is that a good idea?
I don't know.
I don't like it. I think it actually reduces.
I don't know, to be honest, Mike. You see it where it makes sense. Like we all have, and who I don't know who it would be in Portland, Oregon, but you always see in almost any market, significant market, you see the super mega edge agent who really has built their brand, right? Or has built at least awareness around the big billboard sign on the interstate with their mug. Okay. So, yes, that can be effective. Certainly can be. Now, that's always tied to other things that explain why super mega agent X is your best choice. So I don't want to say never put, your photo on a business card or a sign. Usually the things that where sometimes it often just comes down to the execution, right? Does it look schlocky? Are you demeaning yourself as a serious professional doing serious things with that photo crammed into your sign writer?
Yeah.
If you're not doing it really well, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. I'll just say that.
Like with anything else, right?
Yeah, yeah, and like sometimes it's hard to get an honest opinion. So take a trusted friend or a loved one and say, "Look, honey, give me an honest opinion. Uh, is this a good play for me?" Right? Like, and then my wife would say, "Well, no, you haven't looked like that in 15 years. Take the photo or stop doing it."
Agents and their old photos. Last
Yeah,
question. There's a fear of trying to be too narrow in our positioning. I work with first time home buyers. I work with the elder community. I work with veterans. I work with whatever,
yeah,
especially someone who's desperate. They're like, I want everybody.
yeah.
Can you quickly give them that faith that by focusing that will actually work out better for them?
Um, well, yes, because that what you described is a trap. And that is a temptation in positioning, not just for real estate agents, but for any company, particularly in the early days or when times get tough, right? I'm going to cast my net as widely as possible. And like sometimes you'll snag somebody. Honestly, that is sometimes short term what you feel you need to do, but it is delaying or diluting or harming what you probably really need to do, which is to focus on your unique territory or position. And look, just because you establish yourself in a certain territory doesn't mean you're going to attract people from slightly outside of that, right? You're not irrevocably narrowing your possibilities. You're deepening your possibilities. So I don't know. It's again, it's a matter of like long-term business strategy and brand strategy versus short-term need or opportunity. And that's always a tough one to balance.
Well, hey, I really appreciate your time. I really suggest everyone go sign up for the 1000 watt newsletter. You go 1000watt.net, right?
Yeah, 1000watt.net. And you can check out some of our work. You can sign up for the newsletter. It's all there.
Well, I appreciate your time, and I love what you guys do. And if there's anything I ever do for you, let me know.
Oh, Mike, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for having me on.